Well, thank you for joining us on exercise 3G, question 2A. Find the real and imaginary parts of the following complex numbers, and the number is 1 plus 2i over I. Well, there's a few ways we could approach this. We could separate it into two fractions, or we could multiply by its conjugate to get rid of the I, because when there's an imaginary component on the denominator, you can multiply it by its conjugate. Well, let's go ahead and just straight away multiply by its conjugate. Let's see what happens. We've got a 0 plus 1i. I'm just changing I into 0 plus 1i. So that way we can see what the conjugate is quite clearly by just changing the plus into a minus. So the conjugate is 0 minus 1i, and we'll do that on the top and the bottom. Now let's expand and see what we've got. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times negative 1i is negative 1i. 2i times 0 is 0. 2i times negative 1i is negative 2i squared. And on the denominator we've got 0 times 0 is 0. 0 times 1i is 0. 1i times 0 is 0. And finally, 1i times negative 1i is negative 1i squared. All right, so let's simplify this with all the negatives. On the numerator we've got, I just want to focus on this negative 2i squared. Now, in complex numbers, the concept is that I squared is negative 1. So when you have a negative 2i squared, that's negative 2 times negative 1. So that's going to be a positive 2. And on the denominator, we've got a negative 1i squared. So that's a negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. So let's change those. So we've got a negative 1i, and we change this into 2. That's 2. And our denominator is 0, 0, 0, negative 1i squared, which is 1. Wow. So we've got I'll just put the 2 in the front here, and I'll put minus I. And there we have our complex number z, but we want the real component, the real part, and the imaginary part of our complex number. So the real part of our complex number is 2, and because this is negative 1i, our imaginary component is simply negative 1. Well, I hope this has helped. Until next time, stay happy.